Hello, I'm Matt Florence and you're watching my video on North Korea, the propaganda war. Let's go. Now, how much do we know about North Korea is real or just clickbait? Now, I found some stories that a lot of you may have remembered. There was one story by the British newspaper The Guardian, one of the largest newspapers in the UK, and they published a story claiming that North Koreans believed in unicorns. They found the tomb of a king who once rode a unicorn. The Guardian later realised actually their story isn't real, and they apologised and printed a retraction, but sadly the apologies never get as many shares as the original story. I even went so far as to go to London to meet an ambassador from the North Korean embassy and ask him if he believed in unicorns, and you can see the video for that below in the description. So the next story I came across was one that claims that Kim Jong-un had executed a man via a pack of 120 dogs, and he was watching the execution like a maniac, a cartoon villain. This was published by another one of Britain's largest newspapers called The Independent. However, The Independent later realised they fell for a satire story and apologised. Here is the original article, and here is the apology. But again, the apology never gets as many shares as the original article. Then came another story by The Independent again. This time they claimed that North Koreans were executed for watching foreign films. It's a fake story, obviously, and if you do a YouTube search for Pyongyang International Film Festival, you will see very quickly how fake this story really is. However, this time The Independent did not publish an apology for their fake news. Then comes another story claiming that Kim Jong-un had executed his girlfriend. This story wasn't true, but we'll get to the evidence for it later. Now, this story was reported by Chosun Ilbo, one of South Korea's largest newspapers. It was also reported by Business Insider, Huffington Post, and the Telegraph. However, the Telegraph realised it was fake and printed an apology. They realised it was fake after Kim Jong-un's girlfriend appeared alive and well on television. Not to prove that she wasn't alive, but it proved that she was alive. And this story was completely unfounded rumour with no evidence to back it up. Then comes another story. It was reported by WIRED, which is a technological magazine, but their original article has now been taken down. Now, it was about a video that appeared on YouTube titled How Americans Live. Now, the video claims that Americans are all homeless, living in shelters, looked after by the Red Cross, and they have to drink snow to survive, and they live on the streets. The video actually wasn't made in North Korea. It was actually made by a British travel writer called Alan Hill, who is very famous for his clickbaity fake videos and parodies, but people keep falling for it. Sadly. You just have to read in between the lines to see that it's not real and he's making this himself, which is kind of open. You'll have to see. Look at the descriptions below. But luckily enough, some people realised actually it was a parody, and Wired took down their article. The next story that comes up is a fake news story and rumour claiming that all North Koreans believe that Kim Jong-un scored a perfect game of golf his first time. No evidence for this story whatsoever. And it was reported by the New York Times, it was reported by ABC News. However, it was dismissed by golfclubmanagement.net, and nknews.org. Then came a story that North Koreans were all forced to cry, and one news presenter for an American channel called Fox News even claimed that North Koreans were paid in hamburgers and forced to cry at the funeral of Kim Jong-il. No evidence that people are forced to cry. However, the absence of evidence doesn't stop people from making really clickbaity videos to get those likes and shares. Click, 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 click. You can apologise later, it doesn't matter. You want those clicks, you want those shares, you want to become a very popular journalist, don't you? You want to become rich and famous off your articles. Well, start posting crap. I think the best way to get very rich and famous as a journalist and never be called out on your bullshit is just to write fake news about North Korea. That's the way to do it. And also, another thing with these stories is, if you ever want to look at these stories critically, you have to apply the same logic that you do back home to North Korea. So if you see North Koreans crying at a funeral, you don't claim that it's a conspiracy and they're all brainwashed. Look at your own country. Here in Britain, People cried when Princess Diana died. There were crowds of people mourning over her, piles of flowers, tears everywhere. But you don't claim that people are being forced to do it, do you? That's complete ridiculous. Or what about when Hillary Clinton lost the American election? You don't hear North Koreans claiming that all Americans were forced to cry for Hillary Clinton, do you? But of course, when this story is concerning North Korea, people feel as if they can get away with writing anything fake. And the stories just keep going on and on and on and on. A fake news story claiming that women in North Korea were banned from riding bicycles. Another fake news story claiming that North Korea claimed it won the World Cup, which is actually based on a satire video uploaded by Alan Hill again. Another fake news story claiming that North Korea had tortured their football squad for losing. This was reported by Radio Free Asia, which is infamous for printing fake news stories. It was reported by the Daily Mail in the UK. However, FIFA launched an investigation and found that the claims were completely unbased. Then came a fake news story that claimed that North Koreans had claimed they had landed somebody on the sun. This was actually a satire story printed by a very famous satire website in the UK called the Waterford Whisper News. However, many people ended up actually believing it when the article went viral. Then came another story claiming that North Korea had attacked Sony. And even Barack Obama himself had espoused himself that he believed it was Sony. However, no evidence to this date has ever been found on this. So this is one of those not quite proven stories, but we think it's going to happen, therefore we'll just say that it did. The stories just keep going on and on and on and on and on. Then comes another story, all the links to these are in the description by the way, another story claiming that a defector from North Korea had found evidence that North Korea was testing chemical weapons on people. However, when the time came for him to actually give the evidence for us that he promised, he completely disappeared from public view. Now, why do we see all this fake news about North Korea? Two main reasons. One, it's just greed. If you want to get famous as a journalist, you have to write that juicy article. You have to get lots of shares and clicks, which can sometimes have a big effect on the quality of the article if you're not careful. Some people just give up on their media ethics altogether and decide to write this clickbait all the time. Some people can make a good story and get the juicy headline at the same time, and those people are absolute gold. However, they're rare and far to come. They're far to come by. The second reason is purposely put out propaganda to convince us to hate North Korea. Just like every country on the world that has ever ticked off the United States publishes and spreads fake news about them to the extreme. We saw lies, claims that Saddam Hussein in Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. We invaded Iraq and actually, okay, the whole story was fake, but never mind, who cares? Hundreds of thousands of people have died, but who cares? Then, when the United States wanted to invade Libya, we saw fake news stories claiming that Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi had raped women in his palace, and he lived in luxury, and also claiming that he gave his soldiers Viagra to help them to rape people. No evidence for any of these claims, and when rebels finally did capture his compound, it wasn't a palace, it wasn't luxury, it looked more like a military bunker on a ship than any kind of palace that a leader would live in. So there is this big incentive to spread lies about North Korea, to increase your own personal fame as a journalist and get those juicy likes and clicks that everyone needs, and secondly, to convince us to hate North Korea, to make it easier when the United States inevitably ends up bombing them, or invading them, or killing their people like they have in Libya, Iraq, and Syria right now. Now, another common question is about defectors from North Korea. There are thousands of defectors coming from North Korea to go live in China, Russia, United States, or South Korea, or any other countries. The vast majority of these defectors do not have the really awful horror stories that you were used to hearing. The only defectors, like a few tiny, less than 1%, like a dozen or so, the dozen or so that get really rich and famous are the ones with the worst stories. And because many people who defect from North Korea are often in poverty because they don't know how to live and act in other countries, how to function in a foreign land, they sink into poverty. And there is a big incentive, they have to stretch their story to make a living, to survive. And it doesn't help because South Korea has started off, well, they have been offering over $200,000 to North Koreans who have information that can be used against North Korea. This price, however, has recently been boosted from 200,000 American US dollars to 800,000 US dollars. Not only this, but people who do defect from North Korea to South Korea often face incredible discrimination by the South Korean people who view them as spies or insiders or traitors or whatever else. And if they go to a place like Japan, they'll also feel this horrible pressure on them. You're a spy, you're from North Korea, you believe this, you believe that, you're not like us. And so people from North Korea who do defect, they often break down because there's so much pressure against them. They are accused of being a spy, they are just called an outsider and a traitor and whatever. And also because the economic systems of North Korea and the rest of the world are so different. You go from the socialist system that they have in North Korea, and suddenly they're sunk into the very heart of free market capitalism in South Korea. They don't know how to function, because in North Korea, housing, medicine, a job, it's all supplied to them and it's all there. But in South Korea, it's anarchy, it's free for all. Whoever can stab each other in the back, you get ahead by getting on top of other people. And the mental state of these North Korean defectors, they just break down. They can't cope in such an environment because they've never been raised in such an environment that they'd have to do such things like that. They've never been raised in an environment where they had to get over other people or to see homeless people by the side of the streets. That does incredible mental damage to North Korean defectors to be walking down a South Korean street and seeing people living on cardboard boxes. Like, it doesn't function in their minds because they've never seen it before. Why are people living on the streets? If you take somebody from the heart of the Amazon jungle and drop them into the center of New York, and they'll see people starving on the streets. There are people starving on the streets of New York. They're called the homeless population, and they are beaten, abused, robbed, they are raped. That's what many Americans live like. Let's not have any illusions about what it's like on Skid Row. And so they don't function. And so this is what happens to these poor defectors as they break down. The only defectors who get rich and famous, the only ones you ever really hear about, are the ones who embellish their story to the extreme. But let's have a look at another defector whose story you probably never heard about before, and a side of history that you've never really been exposed to.
Every hour, every day, this wife and mother says she suffers, living with the consequences of what she calls a horrible mistake. The wrong choice I made, my choice of wanting to earn money for my treatment, led to the worst situation of my life, says Kim Ryeon-hee. Kim went to China 4 years ago, seeking medical care for liver disease, but found she couldn't afford it. She says a broker tricked her into going to South Korea, promising she'd make a lot of money to pay her bills. Kim says she didn't realize once she signed the papers renouncing her North Korean citizenship, she could never go home. At the time, she says she didn't even know what a North Korean defector meant. Desperate to return to her family, Kim says she pretended to be a North Korean spy, hoping to be deported, instead ending up in prison. Today, she's out on parole, working at a recycling plant. Kim says she's trapped in South Korea. Her arms bear the scars of multiple suicide attempts. In Pyongyang, I meet Kim's husband and 21-year-old daughter, who hasn't seen her mom since she was 17. She asks why. Why can't she come back? Why do we have to go through such suffering? We ask if they'd like to send her a message. To my wife in South Korea, don't forget, here you have parents, a husband and daughter, and a socialist nation. Keep on fighting until the end. We show their message to Kim.
There was a story in Great Britain of a member of the UK North Korean embassy who recently defected to South Korea. He wasn't an ambassador, he was a member of the embassy staff. His name escapes me off the top of his head, but I'll put it right here, I'll edit it into the video. He was a really friendly man. I met him a few times actually in London. He used to talk about the way that black people are treated in the United States, the horrible racial pressures against them. He used to speak out against the never-ending wars in the Middle East that Great Britain and the United States are always sending us into, and he used to pick up all these incredible social issues and really impress us with his solidarity with the people who are suffering there. But I'm not sure if he's ever said anything like that since he defected and joined the South Koreans. All I can say is, I hope he is enjoying his $800,000 cash reward. Thank you, I'm Matt Florence, and this has been the third video in a series of videos, The Propaganda War. My first one was on Syria, my second one was on Russia, and this one is on North Korea, and my next ones will be on Venezuela, Cuba, and China. One more thing before I leave though. Marcel Cartier, the man who sings my end theme you're about to hear now, he published this article about his trip to North Korea. 13 misconceptions about North Korea. You can click on the link in the description below and the top comment and you can read it there. I thoroughly enjoyed it and I'm very glad for him for getting 18,000 shares. Also, listen to his song here about the politics of North Korea and the United States called Bomb Threat. You can access that, you can see a little preview here, and you can see it in the description. Thank you for watching my video. I am Matt Florence and I'll see you in another video.
Many Vietnams, they want me confused about which side